Let me start with one on zero emissions and targets. What I find really problematical right now is that we have a federal government that likes to identify a target. It does zero research on the economic impacts of that target and the cost of it. And to give you an idea, and I have a piece coming out in the Post soon on this, but if you look at New Zealand, for example, a couple of years ago in 2017, they actually had a very detailed report looking at three strategies of trying to get to net zero by 2050. One strategy is just use carbon pricing. And they said, okay, we can get to net zero with an $850 carbon price. Not exactly cheap. And there would be potentially a 14% decline in GDP compared to doing nothing by 2050. 14% is a huge loss in GDP. And in fact, it kind of makes you wonder, is the target really sensible in the first place? Maybe we'd be better off accepting whatever happens in terms of the weather and things like that and climate change and any potential damage, and use mitigation, remedial actions and that may cost some money if we do have abrupt events as being predicted. When you look at the predictions under various models, and they're just models, they're not forecasting models. They're not really, to really understand this, you have to backdate to see how accurate these models are. Well, they have a very wide range in terms of potential temperature increases. But it's very interesting is that when you look at the backdating of those models, at least so far, they tend to be at the bottom of the temperature range, which is a very wide range. And so that sort of suggests that, maybe we're going to have to see what the implications are of climate change. But we have to really think about a plan. If we're going to be moving this direction, we have to think of a plan that really lays out what all the costs that people are going to understand, and whether the target is even sensible in the first place. And so, unfortunately, we don't do that. And we basically have a government that's committed to moving in a certain direction, even faster than most other countries around the world. And we know that global warming is, or climate change as it's now called, because if the world isn't warming, at least we can have some other identifier of the problem. But if global warming is an issue, then it's an international issue. And Canada just working on its own won't solve the problem. It has to have all the other countries doing that. And as we know, China, which is the major emitter now in the world, responsible for almost a third of all emissions. It's a little less than that. But it's still building coal plants. It's not planning to start reducing emissions for another decade at least. And who knows what they do in a decade. But but if you actually look at emissions around the world since 2010, the countries outside of the advanced countries have let their emissions go up by 22% over the past decade. So this really, if people are really going to address this problem, Canada has to really just be harmonized with the rest of the world and not be trying to move ahead of the rest of the world.